To be successful in any organization, you need a clear perspective on how your job fits in with everyone else. Whether you're an individual contributor, middle manager, or CEO, understanding the scope of your role is key. I've got the perfect map for you. I'm Chris Williams, also known as CL Will. I have over 40 years of experience building and leading teams, including being a vice president in the Fortune 100. I'm a leadership advisor here to help you be a better and smarter leader. This is the first in a series of 10 videos to help you understand scope, the perspective of your job in the organization. The goal is to help you understand how the scope of your role plays a vital part in your success. I'll do that with a map called the scope chart. Let's back up and understand why it helps. To chart any clear course requires a map. You need to know where you are, where you're going, and what's expected at each step. This is particularly true in organizations. If you want to know where your role sits in the scheme of things, you need some map of the surroundings. And if you want to move around, especially up, you need some idea of the terrain ahead. The traditional map of an organization is the org chart. We've all seen them. They're lines and boxes that call out who reports to who. They can be helpful to let you know the names, titles, roles, and so on. You get some idea of how the organization is arranged. Savvy people can read org charts carefully and also tell quite a bit more. You can tell relative importance in an organization by looking at where the concentrations of people are. More people, more important. And you can also use titles as tea leaves. The more important areas have the most people with the fanciest titles. Not a lot of VPs in the maintenance department, but dozens of them in the sales team. But to understand how these functions relate from a more basic level, you need to understand how organizations work, how individual contributors relate to the team they're on, how that team functions as part of a larger group or division, and how that all combines to make the company work. At each of these levels are people, many of them managers, making it all happen. If you are or want to be one of those people, you need to understand at a fairly basic level how organizations behave, how these levels interact. It's even more essential if you want to move up in the hierarchy. You need to understand how the scope of your role changes as you go higher. Having a better map here would be extremely useful, something more helpful than the traditional org chart. This is especially important if you want to think strategically. Many people are told to get ahead, they need to be more strategic. What does that even mean? Well, it's actually pretty simple. In an organization, strategic thinking is mostly a matter of perspective, how you look at things. To gain that perspective, it helps to have a map. I designed the scope chart years ago as a way to illustrate organizations. Now I use it with many of my clients to help them understand their place in the world and how to get ahead. Simply put, the scope chart is another way to look at organizations, a way to understand organizational behavior like you've probably never seen. Let's draw a scope chart. On the vertical axis, we have the organization. Down at the bottom is an individual. As you move up, you get to their team, then the division, then the whole company. At the top is the world at large, well beyond the company. On the horizontal, we have time. It starts at the origin with today, then there's this week, this month, this year, many years, and all the way out to the lifespan of the company. As an individual contributor, you're down here. You spend most of your time worried about events today and this week. Your impact is largely on yourself and your team. As you move up, you expand your perspective to the larger parts of the organization and over longer periods of time. As a manager, you need to think beyond your team to its place in the division, and you're looking months or more into the future. As you move higher in the organization, say to a VP, your perspective is the whole company and years into the future. When you get to the CEO job, you're thinking about the company and its role in the world and making decisions that last for many, many years. At each of these levels in the organization, your scope of concern is different. Lower in the organization, the issues are localized and short-term. The higher you go, the larger the impact of the problems, and the longer your thinking needs to be to prepare for them. As you move up, the view, your perspective, changes. At each higher position, you see a broader swath of the company or a longer period of time. In turn, what it means to be strategic is vastly different. That perspective that allows you to see larger and longer is what allows you to be more strategic. When you make the move from individual contributor to frontline manager, your job fundamentally changes. Your actions impact others much more directly, and your time frame shifts from now to the future. But once you're a frontline manager, every job above that is mostly just a change in scope. As you move up, your impact increases across the organization to larger and larger swaths. Your time horizon also broadens to longer and longer periods. But the job is fundamentally the same, helping the organization succeed. What changes is your perspective. Wherever you are, it's important to understand that fundamental concept and to lean into it. From the frontline manager to the CEO, much of the job doesn't change, just the scope of the job changes. That's why the scope chart can be so helpful, and that's why this is the first of a series of 10 videos I'm doing on this scope chart. In later videos, you'll see exactly how viewing the organization through the scope chart allows a unique look at how it works, and helps you understand your role in that organization. You'll see that strategy isn't some mystical vision into the future, it's just what you see from your specific perch. In other videos in this series, we'll look at the many uses for this chart. The scope chart can explain how scale and scope are related, and why that affects every role, why scope is important from the smallest companies to the Fortune 500. We'll explore how scope also explains some pretty classic lousy behaviors, like micromanagement or the seemingly clueless senior leader. We'll see how the many questions that come up in business are changed by your perspective. Scope doesn't just answer the who and the when, but it also helps you understand the what, the how, and even the why. We'll explore that in a later video as well. We'll look at how you can use scope to hire better, lead more effectively, and be more strategic. And we'll take a close look at how your perspective and the perspective of those around you changes as you move up in the organization. Perhaps most important to many of you, we'll look at how you can use scope as a way to understand and advance your career. The scope chart can explain so much of organizations and how they work. That's why I'm dedicating a whole series of video to it. It's an incredibly powerful framework to understand nearly everything about how organizations work. The next video looks at the origins of a company and how scope is related to scale, how the scope of your role changes with the size of your organization, and how to make the most of it. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you won't miss each new video in this series. I'll see you in the next one, understanding company scale and your scope.